Musicians are always on the hunt for new ways to innovate their sounds, whether it's following or influencing the genre shifts throughout the decades, injecting elements of other styles into their music, or incorporating weird and obscure sounds and instruments, some of which are even custom made by the bands themselves. So today we're going to take a look at 10 bands who have incorporated power tools, homemade instruments, obscure sounds, and more into their music. Beginning with the most broad edition on this list and one of the biggest metal bands of all time, System of a Down have long been known for their very raucous brand of metal, including elements of Middle Eastern-esque music, death metal, avant-garde, you name it, there's probably at least one System song that incorporates it. The band, of course, is also very politically charged, oftentimes disguising their message with over-the-top lyrics, such as in the song Cigarro off of 2005's Mesmerize, which is really about corporate execs, but if taken at pure face value, the song is about nasty shits and dong contests. Some other key songs to check out to hear the band at their most bizarre include Vicinity of Obscenity, This Cocaine Makes Me Feel Like I'm on This Song, and Johnny, which I could not find on the streaming services as it was the B-side to the Chop Suey single, but you can hear it here on YouTube. The band is mostly inactive these days, aside from some one-off shows here and there, but they did release a couple of new songs in 2020, Protect the Land and Genocidal Humanoids, which were their first new releases in about 15 years. In a recent interview earlier this month, drummer John Dolmayan said that he feels that the band should have moved on without vocalist Serj Tankian, and that Serj hasn't really wanted to be in the band for quite some time. So as of now, the future of any new music from the band is very unclear. Let's go back in time now to 1975 for the next one on this list. AC/DC with, of course, you guessed it, Bagpipes. The legendary It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll is most likely the first song, and most certainly the best, that comes to mind when anyone thinks of bagpipes appearing in rock songs. But while doing research for this list, I did in fact discover that contrary to what I had guessed, it is not actually the first use of bagpipes in a rock song, with one instance occurring in 1968. While AC/DC was working in the studio, producer George Young recalled that Bon Scott had previously been in a pipe band in school and encouraged him to include bagpipes on a song. While Bon was indeed in a pipe band, the Fremantle Scots pipe band to be exact, he was actually a drummer in that band and had never played a pipe instrument in his life. Nonetheless, though, being the pro that he was, Bon went out, got a set of bagpipes, and eventually learned enough to play what you hear on It's a Long Way to the Top, even getting good enough to do that iconic sort of mimic call and response section with Angus. The video for the song is, of course, also legendary, featuring the band on a flatbed trailer performing live while going through downtown Melbourne, Australia. And nearly 30 years later, in 2004, the city renamed Corporation Lane to AC/DC Lane, paying homage to the video. The video was filmed on Swanson Street, but being a main road in the city, they had to choose a literal road less traveled, and they chose Corporation Lane as it is in close proximity to Swanson Street. Since Bon Scott's death in 1980, the band has not played the song live out of Brian Johnson's respect for Bon, but regardless, let's hope the band will at least tour one more time to support 2020's fantastic Power Up record. Moving on to the next band on this list who have also used bagpipes, although that's not what we're focused on here, it's Korn. Widely regarded as one of the pioneers of the nu metal movement, Korn have incorporated all sorts of interesting sounds into their music, including elements of hip-hop, funk, metal, all sorts of things. But what I find to be the most interesting and unique is Jonathan Davis's legendary Scatting. I remember being a kid and hearing the bridge section of Freak on a Leash for the first time and just being like, what the fuck is this? But now, though, of course, the scatting has essentially become synonymous with Korn, being included on a number of tracks, including the Life is Peachy opener Twist, Ball Tongue from the self-titled record, and in more recent years, Rotting in Vain from the Serenity of Suffering. Jonathan Davis was asked in an interview last year why he doesn't scat as much anymore, answering, quote, "I could do that shit for hours. I don't do the bagpipes a lot, and I don't do the fucking scatting a lot because everybody wants me to, and if I do it too much, it's gonna burn me out. When I do it, it's special. I do it on every record. It's just on one song and not throughout everything." The next one up on this list, and I'm sure I'm going to get some shit for this, but we're going to talk about Godsmack, and more specifically, their tribal-style percussion. Godsmack, especially in a live setting, is a very percussion-heavy band with the excellent, highly underrated Shannon Larkin on drums, and singer Sully Erna being quite a capable drummer himself, and the two even do a drum battle on stage, which has become a staple of their live shows. A couple of key tracks that include the tribal-style percussion with things like bongos and congas include, of course, Voodoo from the first record, which obviously turned into a massive hit for the band, and the closing track from the third album, Faceless, Serenity. That song was actually, believe it or not, inspired by Rush's Neil Peart. Solly read Neil's book, Ghost Rider Travels on the Healing Road, which details Neil's cross-country motorcycle trip that he took to cope with the deaths of both his daughter and his wife. In an interview, Sully said, quote, "The book is so amazing. He jumped on his motorcycle and within 14 months drove 55,000 miles across the world. His experience about healing himself on the road inspired me to write this dark tribal song." Sully initially wanted Neil to appear on the track, which was released in 2003, but he ultimately declined due to touring commitments. He did allegedly compliment the song, though. Staying in the percussion lane for a moment, let's move on to Slipknot. Slipknot has, of course, incorporated multiple influences into their music, none more over the top, though, than the insane amount of percussion. Of the 9 members in the band, 3 of them are pretty much there just to beat the shit out of things, with founder Sean Clown Cran, Michael Tortilla Man Pfaff, who recently replaced Chris Fane, and drummer Jay Weinberg, who has done a fantastic job replacing the irreplaceable Joey Jordison. The other key element that plays an integral role in Slipknot's sound is their highly effective use of samples. A buddy of mine actually sent me a video, which I'll link down below, that shows a lot of the samples that they use on the first record and where they originated from, and my God, it really is crazy, especially how some of them you might not even catch on to until you hear the original source. They even sample Slayer at one point. Craig Jones truly is probably the most underrated part of that band. I'll play a quick sample to show what I mean.
Like they think it's right to murder. They want to murder. Look at all the people, and they get a kick out of it. A sexual kick out of it. The whole thing, I think it's sick.
While we're in the nu metal era, let's shift gears to probably the most underground band to appear on this list, Motograter. Arguably best known as being Ivan Moody's pre-Five Finger Death Punch band, Motograter is also known for their one-of-a-kind homemade instrument, the very aptly titled the Motograter. The instrument was created by founding member Bruce Butler, who hasn't been in the band for quite some time, and is best described by former vocalist Michael Woodruff, who described it as, quote, "Basically, the best way to explain it is as a machine shop style made instrument with sprockets used as high-pitched cymbals, a machete, and industrial strength cables. It's basically 2 octaves lower than a bass. It's low, it's gritty, it's dirty. You definitely can tell a difference between the bass and the moto." Motograter certainly has some cool songs, but unfortunately, things never really took off for the band. Imagine, though, what could have been if Ivan never left for Five Finger. All right, moving on to a very similar yet very different thing, Primus and the Whamola. Primus and Les Claypool in particular have always been known to be a bit of an unusual bunch, which has certainly contributed to their massive success, I'm sure, and the Whamola instrument fits right in. Its name is derived from a whammy bar and a viola, and it's essentially a bass string that you hit with a drumstick, and you pull a lever with your other hand that's attached to the top, which alters the tension, effectively changing the pitch. The most notable use of a whamola is in the theme song to the all-time classic South Park, but Les also uses it on other occasions as well, such as in the song Whamola by the Les Claypool Frog Brigade.
I'm going down south, I'm gonna have myself a time.
For this next one, we're going back to 1991 on the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge record from the one and only Van Halen. The album's opening track, Pound Cake, is an all-time classic VH song and certainly one of my favorites from the Van Hagar era, and of course prominently features a drill of all things in the intro. The idea to use the drill came from Eddie's guitar tech Matt Bruck, who was using it while they were in the studio. Recalling this, Eddie said, quote, "The motor of the drill got picked up by my guitar pickup just like a microphone. I turned my volume on and it sounded like kickstarting your engine. It was just a goofball little thing." Here's a quick clip of Eddie using the drill live. Moving on to probably the most obvious one on this list, it is, of course, Jackyl. Hands down, one of the most underrated rock and roll bands of all time, in my opinion, especially that first record. Jackyl is certainly best known for using a chainsaw, most notably on their song The Lumberjack, but that is actually not the only song of theirs to feature a chainsaw. On their 2012 release, the excellent Best in Show, which is certainly deserving of that title as well, the band does a cover of the 1972 Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show classic, cover of the Rolling Stone. Aside from sampling the classic We Will Rock You drum beat, the song features another epic chainsaw solo, performed once again by frontman Jesse James Dupree. Let's wrap this up with a bit of a surprising one if you're unfamiliar, Ghost and the Kazoo. In 2015, the underground occult-turned-TikTok trend band appeared on SiriusXM to give an acoustic performance of Gullah and Zombie Queen from their second record, and just about 45 seconds in, Papa whoops out the unthinkable, a motherfucking kazoo. I could sit here and try to explain it to you, but honestly, you need to see it for yourself, so here it is. All right, though, I gotta run. My fiance is waiting to use one of her power tools on me, so I gotta go. But thanks so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.